one little bob tier.
I got you.
I got one. I'm good. Let's go. You lead the way. I don't know where I'm going. Oh, footsteps. Did I need to click something? Because I didn't.
I think you counted mine for both of us.
I don't think I did.
Oh.
I'll go click something.
You throw the Bob's tear into the fireplace.
Got it. I'll do that.
And then you follow the mysterious footsteps.
Yeah, so I sacrifice it?
Yes.
Like Q?
Yep.
Who seek knowledge, follow in my footsteps and gain wisdom.
Gotta find the footsteps.
There. That's creepy.
Of course it is.
It gives me Bed Wars vibes when you're looking for those invisible particles, so you can shoot them and then they get mad at you thinking you're cheating even though you saw the particles. You're so slow.
Yeah.
Ooh. Fancy. And then there we go. Ooh, secret discovered. Did it say secret discovered found? Okay. Rengi's Secret Library, Wyn Plains. A 12-volume story of Wyn's great hero can be found here. The origins of this library and others like it still remain unknown. Wait, where's this 12-volume? I want to see if they actually wrote it out. Why are they
Chapter 1.
Did they actually write it out?
Chapter 3.
Chapter 1. Okay, today might just be a reading day. We're just gonna read out the whole story. You guys ready for this? We'll do challenges next week. Okay, The Legend of Bob, Chapter 1. 854 years after the portal was first opened, Rengi suffered one of the largest raids ever recorded in western soil. Although the famous forts of Ragni and Troms were deemed impenetrable, this was unfortunately not the case when seas of monsters brought by the curse came knocking on the front gates. Despite having fought for centuries in the Cursed War, Rengi's army numbers were high, and many a man laid down their lives to protect the families within the walls. However, the sheer numbers pressed against the door, broke the hinges, and the large gate fell into the bridge, and the largest horde recorded entered the city. Many of the residents were slaughtered, maimed, or infected by the onslaught of creatures. Those able to run hid in the sewers, a vast series of tunnels that ran out of the city and into the foulest place the humans could create, their prison. It's like
Across. Yeah,
oh, okay, so that's how they do it. Okay, that's fair. Legend of Bob, Chapter 2. The idea was to combine two of the most horrible things, the untreated sewage and the dark cells containing Wyn's worst criminals, to add to their suffering. It really was a horrid place. At a time like this, it was the safest place to be, and the women and children sought refuge in its stench. During the flight, a woman who had never said her name nor where she had come from, she certainly wasn't one of Rengi's own, gave birth to a baby boy on the cold floors of the sewer. Though the woman accompanying her child did all they could, the unknown woman did not survive the childbirth. The horde lasted 6 days, and the sewer folk did not know what the baby would make it. The conditions were so rotten. It's Chapter 3.
I think we have enough time for more stuff to this.
Okay. Chapter 3. Against all odds, the child made it, suffering no more but a smudge of dirt across his cheek. To everyone's amazement, he was adopted by Rengi's poorest resident, a single mother named Momo. He worked in a local bakery, carrying bread and cake into the palace, taking whatever he could get away with. What a thief. Despite his mother being poor, she was nonetheless intelligent and taught the child, who she named Robert, everything she knew, taught him to read, write, and, to a degree, to fight. Robert was never a popular lad, always treated differently. His skin was a shade of grey unnatural to those of Rengi, and who had always been fair-skinned. As such, he didn't have many friends and wasn't held particularly well among the older citizens either. When he was 12 years old, a horde found its way into the city once more, like it did just over a decade before. More hordes! Although far smaller than its predecessor, the horde was nonetheless a threat, as Rengi's army was so wounded from the last encounter. The beacons were not lit from the scouts and caught the entire city by surprise. Not Robert, though. He always keeps a knife he stole from the butchers in his belt to protect the ones he loves. Being so poor, Momo's shack was on the outskirts of Rengi and was one of the first to get hit. Robert ran for the house, finding it empty, but hearing a gasping from below. Entering the cellar, he found his mother lying bleeding beside a recently stabbed creature. He went to her aid, knowing it would be in vain. She simply nodded at him. They had made an agreement when Robert was 8 years old that if she ever became infected, she wanted him to end her life, rather than endure the gruesome, prolonged infection that had no cure. Momo placed in Robert's hand a piece of parchment with a crude, blood-stained drawing of 4 areas, each with a strange name under it he hadn't heard of. In the fires of the fight, Robert fled from the city, wielding not his butcher's knife, but a pair of pitch-black knives encrusted with symbols that glowed a purple color, a cloak and a pouch holding what little food was left in the house. He headed east to the sandy area indicated by his mother's drawing, the one with the knife symbol and the number 1. When Robert reached it, he found one man who did nothing but held out his hand, and Robert placed the only thing of value to him, the dark daggers, in his hand. The man began to tell Robert of what he must now do to aid in the war. He must travel to the 4 masters of Wynn Providence to learn their magic and skill if he is to lend his hand in the cursed war. Only once he had mastered one skill would he be given the key that the next master would accept. After 5 years of training to become an assassin, Robert was now 17 years old and incredibly powerful. The master, Chuck, who had taught him, told him his time was now up with him and he would have to progress to learn archery. Chuck took Robert's daggers, to which the handles began to glow bright, and molded together to form a large sheen bow, to which he strung a thick strand of his own hair. Slightly creepy. Clark handed it back to him and said, "Even the most experienced soldier must stand from scratch when learning a new mastery." And it was true. Robert was not equipped to deal with any creature that faced him. He never even fired a bow. Robert began his journey further south, past the blizzards into a pocket of land he'd never seen on any map, a bow symbol with the number 2 accompanying it. It was home to only one building, a large mansion to which a man stood with his hands outstretched as Robert approached. Just like 5 years previous, Robert handed him the bow, to which he said, "I am Mel, master of archery. Let us begin, just as you progress, as does the war." To which Robert spent a further 5 years mastering the art of crafting and firing arrows, in any situation and learning the magic surrounding the bow. And this time, Robert also learned about the areas he trained in. Mel was incredibly spiritual. The mansion in which he lived in was also house to many spirits, which found Mel to heal them. Robert learned about the other side, and how many of the fallen soldiers returned cursed to fight on the other side, to which Robert secretly hoped he was able to communicate with his deceased mother. However, Robert never expressed these desires, and Mal told him the time had come to learn some magic that involved no physical weapon that you could hit people with. Robert handed over his bow, to which a familiar gold glow transformed it into a pure black rod with the same purple markings around them. Robert looked at the old frayed map to see the next area with a single line in it and the number 3, except this time he knew what that area was. It was the forest he passed through when he was 12 years old to get to the desert to begin his training. He barely made it. For the first time since he began his training, Robert was filled with fear. The forest was full of spiders and poison, and the thought of poison always reminded him of the time never mind that. Robert set off to the forest, wielding a stick that was about as much use as a hollowed-out pumpkin. Oh, I jumped instead of sneaked. He couldn't, for the life of him, make it work. Regardless, when he reached the forest, he entered a mystical village, suspended in the trees, lit by hanging lamps, to which the familiar sight of a man with his hand outstretched grasped the wand Robert laid in his hand. "You're halfway through your journey. Do not let frustration warp you. Let us begin the hardest of all arts," were the first words Eth, the magical master, had ever said to him. And it was certainly true. Wand lore had not come so easily to him as knivery and archery had. However, the arts of magic eventually flowed through him over the coming 5 years, to which point Robert was now 27 years old, and beginning to wonder if he would ever remain young enough to fight in the war. Eth told Robert it was time to move on, and transformed his wand into a final form, a giant black spear. Even his mature eyes gleamed at the sight of it. The spear was the weapon of Troms, the greatest fort man had ever created. I do respect them for actually making the entire story. The map indicated that he must travel to Troms, where the last spear symbol and the number 4 were written. Upon arrival, Robert was surprised. The city had been hit hard. He never heard of Troms so much as receiving a scratch from the creatures. It was so well guarded. But then again, Robert had been absent from civilization for 15 years. In the fires, a man stood with his hand outstretched, completely ignoring the pleas of the people around him begging for help, to which Robert placed his spear. The man said, "This is the final leg of your journey, that the plights of this town that you see here today force you onward with your training, and help protect this land when you are done. My name is Fear. Let us end your training." Robert spent the next 5 years learning the skills surrounding the spear in the greatest city of Troms, rebuilding and defending it when necessary in his spare time. It was the first time he was with people, and by people, I mean people that aren't strict masters of their art that seemed to solely exist to teach Robert the ways of a soldier. Robert learned to love the people he was round, and people called him Bob rather than Robert. A girl told him, "I don't know, I just think you just sound better when you're called Bob." Robert liked it, and when he met new people, he introduced himself as Gus. First training after 5 long years had finally come to an end, to which he said this: "You are now the strongest soldier this province has ever seen. Use your power wisely, and you shall end this war." Then, to his surprise, all the masters materialized in a line beside Fur and smiled, Mel even nodding slowly at him, to which a voice behind him said, "Why are you crying, Bob? There's no one there." The 4 masters vanished, and Bob knew what he must now do, returning to Ragni to save what little of it was left. Bob then spent the remainder of his life serving at Whynn's private demigod, destroying all creatures that ever came a settlement under his protection. He did not pass on his skills, in fear they would not be used for the greater good which troubled him, for if he were to pass, who would replace him? Certainly not his 3 companions, the animals which he loved dearly. Perhaps he would brew them a potion, prolonging their life. They were good animals, after all. Bob's story quickly became a huge beacon of hope for many fighting the war. No one could defeat Bob and his dark weapons. However, this is where the story becomes myth. I'm afraid, after a century of fighting, Bob vanished in the year 984 AB, after Portal. It was rumored he heard of a beast corrupting the province, promoting the war and increasing the strength of the monsters. I imagine Bob probably sought to destroy it, but in his old age perhaps he wasn't up to the mark. It was then, though, just 1 year after his disappearance, Bob's tomb appeared in the snow, marking the place where he was buried. By whom? No one knows. Perhaps it was the killer, or maybe it was his master's magic. It still lies there today, holding his body. It's worth a visit. Many have told of great adventures and magic surrounding the place. One thing is for sure, Bob truly was the master of the Whynn arts, and will forever go down in history as the mightiest soldier. Perhaps one day, someone will follow in his footsteps. Like all these people were reaching a level 105 as we were doing this.
Yeah, his tomb is the quest that requires 3 people.
And we're back with food. Food.
I believe we are now off to elemental exercise.
Yep, that looks right to me. We'll probably just do that with the reading and, and then be good. I did click it. I don't think I clicked it. I didn't click it. Now I clicked it. We good. We're here. Let's learn about some magic. Today is just like an education day. Hello, Rickon. Aha! Finally! I'm waiting for a recruit like yourself to turn up. We're running experiments to improve our arsenal in the war effort. We've captured a cave beast in the cave over there. We believe certain magical weapons will harm him more than others. Let me explain. The cave creature is living root. It contains the properties of earth. Now, in theory, it should be weak to fire. These elemental attributes are not uncommon. Let's test it out, shall we? Take this book and change it for a fire-infused weapon. Use it on the creature and I'll study whatever remains you give me. Yeah. Here's a book, which it's not going to let me read. Probably because I think it's empty at this point. And I want the fiery bow. Nearly click the daggers. It's like, don't do that.
Yeah.
Why are you following your daggers?
Why do I feel slow? Oh, that's why.
I got it. Oh, hi. Oh, I can shoot him like really quickly now. That one's yours.
Oh, I got one.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh, I got 2.
I was just...
Which we give to...
Dragon.
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 Interesting. It's completely destroyed the beast. It seems our theories might be correct. No experiment is viable on just one test subject. I need to test you on more Earth creatures. They hide in the cave behind the hill. We've got the creature we captured from deep within the cave, so you'll have to go a bit deeper as well. There's a root in the way, but I'm sure you can handle that. A good sample would be 10 scorched roots. Just make sure the theory is true. I'm a little confused about his methods.
Why?
Well, we don't have any, us not using fire weapons against them. A controlled study? You're supposed to have both?
Maybe he already has a controlled study.
Maybe. Can I just use this? I did. It worked faster. Don't keep him there. Oh, I forgot. I can, like, spam click now.
It's good because this weapon is weak compared to our normal weapons.
Yeah, my normal ones are just murder them. I haven't picked any up. Have you picked any up? Oh no, I'm inside something. Hey, wake up! Where am I? Whoa. Hi.
Huh.
Do I talk to
Why?
you?
Just
Is everything alright? We felt the cave collapse. We came down as soon as possible. The ground is engulfed. We'll have to find another way out of this cave. How do you get down there? Forget about the sun-scorched roots. It's not important right now. Just exit to safety. Oh, and I almost forgot. I was going to give you this when you complete the task, but you should take it anyways. Considering you just almost died. What is this?
some sort of bracelet.
Is it any good? Oh, an unidentified bracelet. So it's good. Are you mad? Don't run back into the fire. I don't want to have to save you a second time. Fair enough, fair enough. I'm going to... Oh my gosh, I'm going to die if you fire. It is this way, right?
Yep.
I forgot that I did that. There's a button here.
Yeah, the button doesn't have to. You want to go to the back.
Up that there? Okay. Turn it over. It's just being really weird. Not let me over here.
There should be a vine to climb.
I couldn't find the vine, so I just jumped. You should ring the bells, look at the camp to let them know you're alive. Where's the camp? I'm assuming this is what, yep, there he is, the glowing man. Good to see you made it out! Would you mind giving me your fire weapon back to the surgeon and bring me his study results? Okay. The study merchant. You are, oh, I see how this works. Thank you. Thank you for your business. Come again. Thank you. I guess you can use this. It's not a lot, but we're not the richest scientists around. Sorry for all the trouble we put you through. Now, allow me to share our findings. It would seem elemental mobs come in different varieties and forms across the whole world, including Gabbo. Depending on the type, they will be stronger or weaker to whatever elemental weapon you use. However, they will never be immune to your neutral damage, but as you saw with the roots, the fire weapon did exceptionally more damage. Debatable. I have a very powerful weapon. You can specify your elements in your skill points, and there's a tower win where you're able to reset them, and should you want to change. There are 5 elemental types we have discovered so far. Air, thunder, earth, fire, and water. Each one of those is useful in their own ways. I hope this information helps you in the war. Good luck! A vibrant argument? What is a vibrant argument?
It gives you,
Oh, just plus to everything.
yeah, it's
And
a
then,
super
but it
weapon type
weakens
deal.
it.
Yeah.
Let's see, the bracelet gives plus 15 health. which is better than this iron bracelet that makes him slow. So we'll replace that. So now we have that. Let's see how this chest plate is. 57. Oh, mine's 45. So let's see, 57. And makes spell. I don't have spell damage, so that's not a big deal. It makes me slower because everything does. Plus 11 health and plus natural 19 damage. Yeah, I guess it's better. We'll replace our chest plate then. With the bear pelt. I'm wearing a bear pelt now. But we are gonna be signing off now. Farewell!